Welcome back, I'm Captain Xavier, and today ultimately I'm working on a paint job. This blaster was sent to me with the shell work already done. They did the battery housing and the front end and the stock attachment point and the flywheel covers. All of that was already done. They just want me to do the paint job as well as some cleanup. So this is really what I'm going to be showing you today is how to do some cleanup on your integrations. Because there's a bit of rough work still on the front and back of this that we're going to get in real close and try cleaning out, try to make it look a little bit cleaner before we throw the paint on. The tools I'm going to be using, I've got my regular flat and curved edge file for some larger spots, and then most of the work is going to be done probably with this little file, which is a diamond file, so it's good against metal, it's good against all sorts of plastics. The tip, it does have a point, it's rounded on one side, flat on another side, so you can get into just about anywhere with this, and because it is rigid, it's really good for digging out things like epoxy and glues and little bits of 3D printing filament that's not where you want it to be. And so we're going to be going along the edge where the seam is, where it's been glued, and cleaning that up and digging out places where we don't want it. And then we're going to be cleaning up some of the edges with epoxy, where there are big gaps in the shell from where things were cut because it was meant to be a longer part. And yeah, we're going to get in and get it all cleaned up, and then we are going to, after that, I will be painting it. So, getting into some of the really nitty-gritty areas where the shells are integrated and glue or epoxy spread to places you didn't want, you can get in and basically use this like a pick that's also abrasive, which is really handy because it doesn't take off a lot of material, but it will take off anything that isn't flush. So this extra epoxy and glue or whatever they have that's holding this all together, this is a beautiful way to get it off without doing undue damage to the blaster itself. The beautiful thing about these files is that they are abrasive on all sides and equally abrasive in any direction. So you can go back and forth, up and down, side to side. Doesn't matter, it will remove material the same. Yeah, so that's got that much cleaner. It looks, much rougher than it actually is. Once we hit it with the paint, most of that will get filled in and smoothed out, and it'll look real nice. So for a lot of this, I'm using the actual point, and I'm getting in there and digging out glue or epoxy or whatever has been used to hold this thing together. And because of the nature of the diamond-headed bit, it doesn't matter which direction you go, and the whole thing is abrasive, so you can really get into those nooks and crannies and dig out the glue, and that's, creating unwanted shapes and lumps and whatnot, and get it all cleaned up. Get all your angles and corners sharpened up again. This stuff has roughly the consistency of sandpaper, but is rigid, or it has the abrasive nature of sandpaper, but is rigid and doesn't wear out. So it's not going to take off a lot of material quickly, but it will continue to take off material for a really long time. I'm sure they would eventually wear out if you used them a lot on metal, but using them on plastic, they're probably pretty much going to be with you forever. A very key element here is patience. If you try to take off too much too fast, you're going to end up taking up too much. That's why I'm not using any kind of power tool for this. I'm not using a sander on a Dremel or anything like that. I'm doing it by hand because I can always sand it a little more, file it a little more, and take a little bit more off, but the moment I take too much off, it becomes a lot more of an issue to fix. Now you can fix taking off too much by filling it back in, but it's much easier to just not take off too much in the first place. So take your time. Don't be in a hurry. Alright, so I have sanded down all of the lumpier areas of glue that I can, in fact, reach. Ground out that. Got the back here, down here, sanded down. The back is actually pretty good, except for maybe right here. Yeah, there was one little hole in the shell back here, just plugged that. Cleaned up the front here with putty. Once it dries, I'll be able to sand it down a little bit smoother. But now it still looks like it's a mess, but it's actually now smooth. And so once we paint it, then all of those blemishes will go away. We're going to start by filling in the hole on this side. Alright, that I believe is that side, all nicely done. Our epoxy has solidified pretty well in here. It's not quite solid, but it's definitely better. Filled in both of those gaps. Let's take a look at the other side now. Alright, I do believe it is good to go. Let's go throw the base coat on it. Alright, there is still a little bit of painting I still need to do. A couple of little cracks and crannies that I didn't quite get. But you can now see how the cleanup work has been largely made even better by the paint. And this is vinyl dye, so it really puts a really thin layer because it actually soaks into the plastic. Once I start doing the detailing paint, that will add a thicker layer, and that'll cover up even more of some of the scratches and stuff that have been left behind. But all of the gaps have been filled, and it is much smoother and much nicer than it was before. So there are a couple of techniques on how to do some of your cleanup work. The more work you put into it, the cleaner it will get. That is, once again, like I said, patience, but you'll get out of it what you put into it. If you want it to be absolutely perfect and have no residue of any paint marks or glue marks of any kind, you're going to have to put in a lot of time to sand it all down and clean it all down, or be really careful when you do it in the first place to make sure that there is no residue to begin with. So there are my tips on some basic cleanup work. Hope this was helpful, and thank you guys for watching.